Matt Duro, who is a deputy editor on the Wealth team. Matt, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Brittany.
I have to issue a big congratulations because Forbes just released the 2025 list of America's richest immigrants. So, to start off the conversation, this is the first time the list has been released since 2022. So, talk to us a little bit about what you found.
Sure. So yeah, we were really excited to revive this list, and we saw a pretty significant jump in the number of immigrant billionaires since we last did the list in 2022. So we found 125, which is up nearly a third from 2022, when I think we found 92. So a lot of new faces on the list, and comes with that a lot of new and interesting, colorful stories about their immigrant journeys. So it was a lot of fun to compile.
I'm excited to dive a little deeper into some of their immigrant stories, but I want to read an interesting stat that you wrote for Forbes. Three of the 10 richest people in America and the world are immigrants. So, to start off that conversation, talk to us a little bit about those stories.
Sure. So number one, as you might guess, is Elon Musk, and so he came to the U.S. via Canada from South Africa to study at the University of Pennsylvania, and then his sort of tech career took off from there. And I think there was some Washington Post reporting recently into whether he may have started working at his first tech company without getting the proper work authorization, which caused a little bit of a hoopla. But obviously, that's all been worked out since then. The second richest immigrant, who is also among the top 10 richest in the world, is Sergey Brin from Google. So he and his family moved from Russia when he was a kid to escape the anti-Semitism they were facing in that country. And then the third, who has really, jumped up the list over the last few years, is Jensen Huang of NVIDIA. And so he is from Taiwan originally and moved to Thailand with his family when he was a young kid. And then there was a lot of social unrest in the country. So his parents sent him and his older brother to the US at a very young age. I think he was 8 or 9 years old. And then, obviously things have worked out very well for him. And, I think he is probably, from 22 to 2025, other than Musk, maybe like seeing the biggest net worth jump with, NVIDIA just exploding.
And you tracked all of their net worths, and for the most part, it seemed like a lot more people's net worths increased than decreased when it came to this list. Why do you think that is? Why do you think you're seeing this expansion of the list this year opposed to 3 years ago?
Yeah. In terms of the, you know, like you said, if people go to our list, we'll have an icon next to each individual, and it'll indicate, whether they're a newcomer to the list, whether their net worth is up or down versus the 2022 list. And yeah, like you said, Brittany, most of them are up. And I don't think that is, unique to the immigrants. I think that is sort of, reflective of the broader trend among all American billionaires, and I would say billionaires worldwide, where markets since 2022 have just continued to climb. And, the richer have got, or the rich have got even richer. And that, certainly applies to this immigrant subset as well.
The rich are getting richer. What other trends are you seeing when it comes to the richest American immigrants?
Sure. So there was a bit of a shakeup in terms of the countries and territories from which most of the immigrant billionaires come. So back in 2022, the number one country was Israel, and they ranked second this year, tied with Taiwan, actually, who sort of skyrocketed up the list. I don't remember exactly where they were in 2022, but if they were in the top 10, they barely cracked it. I think they were probably outside of the top 10. So both of those countries have 11 billionaire immigrants. and Taiwan actually increased its number of billionaire immigrants from 4 to 11, which was the biggest jump we saw. And then the other big change was that India overtook Israel this year. So it now has the most billionaire immigrants with 12.
A lot of the stories that you found, it seemed like these billionaires came to America in search of a better life. So I'm curious exactly how did they make their money? How many of these immigrants are self-made versus they got their money through inheritance?
Yeah, no, it's a pretty crazy stat because if you look at American billionaires as a whole, nearly a quarter of them inherited at least, a significant chunk of their fortunes, if not all of it. And then when you look at the population of immigrant billionaires, 93% of them are, totally self-made. They came here and built their, billion or multi-billion dollar fortunes from scratch. So yeah, a lot of these people sort of came from, you know, difficult circumstances and came from nothing and, were able to succeed, on an unprecedented level here in the United States.
Exactly. I mean, these stories are incredible, coming from nothing and really just achieving greatness here. What industries are you seeing these billionaires working in? Is there one where you're seeing most of their success, or is it spread out equally? What does that really look like?
Yeah, so there's, pretty broad coverage across industries, but overall it is pretty concentrated within, tech, as you might expect, and then finance. I think between those two industries, nearly two-thirds of the immigrant billionaires on our list made their money in those sectors. And tech, you know, I think was the biggest one and, maybe had twice as many as finance, but together they account for about two-thirds of the immigrants on the list.
Matt, you are on the wealth team here at Forbes, so I just can't imagine how many billionaires you have talked to in your Forbes tenure. So, based on your reporting overall in the past couple of years, and based on your reporting on this list, when you're talking to people and billionaires who immigrated to America, are their perspectives different than the American born billionaire when it comes to business, when it comes to hard work, anything like that?
Yeah, I would say so. We asked a lot of these folks, how being an immigrant shaped them. And, you know, a thing we heard was, you sort of come from a place like Hungary or wherever when it was, part of the Soviet Union. And then you come to America and you have this totally different perspective where the basic things that you and I take for granted are just like appreciated so much more, naturally. And I guess like they don't feel like anything is owed to them. Um, and so they're really driven to put their past behind them in some cases and to, take advantage of the opportunities presented to them by the US. And so, yeah, I mean, I think when you've, gone through some of the challenging journeys that these immigrant billionaires have gone through, the, even some of the more difficult problems that you and I or any other, American born here might face probably seems a little bit more or a little bit more surmountable relative to what they had already experienced. So I think, dealing with that adversity probably, builds up a lot of resilience. And yeah, I think that's probably the big difference.
Matt, I feel like our beats are really intersecting here because I cover mostly politics. You cover the world's wealthiest. And we're talking about immigrants
And,
here.
and,
President Trump, as we know, in his second term, has really
and,
honed in on immigration. This was one of his top
and,
campaign
and,
promises that he was going to take a tougher stance on immigration.
and,
We have seen that in the past couple of
and,
months into his second
and,
term.
and,
Overall, how do the people on this list
and,
feel about President Trump's
and,
immigration
and,
policies?
yeah, I would say it's more mixed than you would think. I think there are those whose homelands have been more directly affected or targeted by certain immigration related policies that, uh, you know, feel more negatively about Trump. So, for example, two of the billionaire immigrants that we spoke to, one of them was Jorge Perez, whose family basically fled the Castro regime in Cuba and came to the U.S. And he was actually, you know, pretty much up until 2016. He's from Miami. He's a real estate developer. So he was a friend and business partner of Trump's. And then, when Trump, ran for president and started talking about building the border wall, sort of turned on him and became a big critic of his. And so he's very outspoken and against, most of what the Trump administration is doing on immigration. Talked to another Iranian billionaire who, felt similarly and, wondered whether his family would have been allowed into the country today, given that Iran is included with, I think, 18 other countries that are part of this travel ban that Trump recently reenacted from his first term. But then there are a lot of immigrant billionaires who are supportive of, the president's, sort of, in particular, crackdown on illegal immigration and, you know, all seem to be in favor of legal immigration, but they see it as, a problem that is straining the country's resources and, among other things. And so it's definitely not across the board like immigrant billionaires are against Trump's immigration policies. It's uh, pretty nuanced, more nuanced than I would have expected, I guess.
It's pretty mixed. And those 125 stories that you have on this list, I mean, they're all different, but there are some similar through lines. One being they came to America for a better life and they achieved so much in business. And President Trump, as we know, in this second term, whether it be his travel ban or tougher immigration work requirements, he has done a lot in the immigration aspect of that. Would some of these entrepreneurs even be allowed to work here if they were trying to come to America now, if they were trying to start their American journey now?
Yeah, that's a good question. And at least two of them that we spoke to didn't think they would. So there was Perez, who I referenced, who's, thought his family uh, coming from Cuba wouldn't have been able to do so, due to the travel ban and other, reasons. And then it was sort of the same story for this Iranian billionaire that I referenced, Joe Kiani. Iran is also a part of that travel ban. And he came as a child because his father came to study engineering in the U.S. And so he referred to the fact that, it felt a lot more welcoming in the U.S. to foreign college students, back then than it does now. There's another reason he talked about, thinking that his family might not have come to the U.S. But we for the story we talked to about a dozen immigrants, and those two were kind of outliers. Like there was another Iranian immigrant, Maki Zanganeh, who said she would still come to the U.S. and basically said, there's no place like the U.S. in terms of like funding the best ideas and innovation. And so, yeah, even and Shad Khan, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, did have some criticism of the Trump administration's approach to immigration, but he was among that group that was like, the U.S. is still by far the place to be, and they all seem to think it will continue to be.
I'm thinking about the American dream. People think if I go to America, if I work hard, if I'm determined, I can succeed. A better life is there for me. Overall, on this list, do people on this list still think it's possible to achieve the American dream through this hard work and determination?
Yeah, I mean, I think mostly across the board, with the exception of the one or two individuals who didn't think they'd even be allowed in. But yeah, mostly of across the board, there seemed to be a widespread belief that the American dream does still exist, and obviously it's worked out, very well for them. So in their experience, it has worked out. But they generally do seem to think that it uh, is still there for newer immigrants who have not yet at least achieved their level of success.
Matt Duro, I appreciate your reporting. A big congrats on